The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd have held crucial 2+2 talks with their Japanese counterparts in a bid to bolster a key alliance in the face of rising challenges from China. During their meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for deeper economic ties with Japan. Tokyo also sought U.S. support for the upcoming Tokyo Olympic Games and follow-up talks on other subjects that figured at the Quad Summit, such as commitment to boost COVID-19 vaccine supplies in Asia and the challenges posed by climate change.
But what brings us together, I think, is a shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific region, and we will work together as allies and friends to help achieve it. One key element of this is the denuclearization of North Korea. We will continue to work on that as friends and partners. We're also standing together in support of our shared values. We believe in democracy, human rights, the rule of law, because we've seen in our own countries that those values actually make us stronger, and because they're under threat in many places, including in the region, whether it's in Burma or whether in different ways, China.
Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd met with his Japanese counterpart Nobuo Kishi in Tokyo.
本日は東シナ海、南シナ海での中国の行動を中心に地域情勢について意見交換し、また同盟の抑止力、対処力に強化に向けて日米が取るべき具体的な取り組みについて幅広く議論をしたい。
Yet today our alliance forges on, resolute and resilient, in the face of our shared challenges. And without question, the U.S. Japan alliance remains the cornerstone in addressing today's and tomorrow's challenges as we work together to uphold a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Biden administration's overseas debut is considered to be important as it focuses on wide-ranging issues concerning these nations. Freedom of navigation in South and East China Seas, semiconductor supply chain security, while the North Korean nuclear issue and a military coup in Myanmar were also top focus of the meeting. The meetings highlight a focus by the new Washington administration on rebuilding alliances in Indo-Pacific in the face of an assertive China. The flurry of diplomacy, which began on Friday with a virtual summit of US's Quad allies, Australia, India and Japan, establishes the Asia-Pacific as a top priority of the Joe Biden administration in Washington. Meanwhile, US and South Korean negotiators have overcome years of contentious discussions under Donald Trump. A tentative deal has been reached on paying for the American troop presence in South Korea. This agreement will be front and center in Blinken and Austin's meetings when they reach Seoul. The visits to the United States' strongest partners in East Asia are a prelude to the Biden administration's opening round of face-to-face contact with Beijing. Antony Blinken and Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, will be meeting with Chinese officials in Alaska on the 18th of March after top U.S. officials conclude their trip to Japan and South Korea. So let's take you across to Tokyo. WION correspondent Grace Lee is joining us live from Tokyo. Grace, we heard a few reactions from American diplomats in Tokyo, and certain keywords were highlights: free and open Indo-Pacific, democracy, human rights. What are the key takeaways of this meeting?
Well, the meeting is just ending now. I think the foreign ministers are holding a press conference, and from media reports, we're likely to see a very rare joint statement from the ministers condemning China for its actions in the East China Sea, where we've been seeing some ramped up behavior, especially from Chinese ships in that area. You talked about a recent change in the law that allowed China to potentially be a little bit more aggressive in that region, use force if they see if that's necessary. That has been a big point of concern for both officials in Tokyo and in Washington. So we may be seeing them discussing that in a very straightforward manner. If you recall, at the Quad Summit, the ministers or the leaders there did not directly address China as being a problem, but this time around we may see something that's a little bit more direct.
Grace, this visit by U.S. officials signifies how much importance Joe Biden administration is placing in its ties in the Indo-Pacific region. This is a debut by top American officials under the Joe Biden administration, and undoubtedly it's being closely monitored in Beijing as well. In fact, Beijing has been closely monitoring U.S. engagements with its Asian allies recently. Beijing came out with a very strongly worded reaction on the recent Quad meeting between leaders of the 4 countries. It said, and I'm quoting here, "Relevant countries should abandon the Cold War mentality and ideological bias, do not form exclusive cliques, and act in a way conducive to solidarity," unquote. So Beijing is calling the Quad a clique. Why is this such a strongly worded reaction coming in from leaders of the Chinese Communist Party? Have they been rattled by this grouping of the world's top democracies?
Well, China has always seen the Quad as these nations ganging up against Beijing. And so in the past few months, it has been rather on the defense about what this means for China. On the other hand, Washington has reiterated time and again that Asia will be a priority for them, and dealing with an increasingly aggressive China is top of their agenda. And like the U.S. officials said today, them visiting Japan as a first stop as newly elected, President Biden's newly elected officials, this does show the kind of priority that they're placing in the region, and a sign that they won't really step back from dealing with China, something that officials here in Japan had been a little bit afraid of. In the past few years, the past 4 years with President Trump, they'd seen a lot of very aggressive rhetoric. There had been some importance placed in dealing with China and this Quad relationship. We heard a lot from Mr. Mike Pompeo on this issue just a few months back as well. But it does seem like Biden is trying to set his own pace on this. And today, perhaps in this press conference later today, we'll see a little bit more on what the administration's direction will be in approaching Asia.
Grace, one final question to you. It's very important for the leadership of Japan and South Korea to also maintain close ties with America, given the challenges posed by China and North Korea. And we are seeing that, how much importance Prime Minister Suga is placing in this relationship. We saw shots of Prime Minister Suga getting vaccinated, and he will be leading his delegation to America for a face-to-face meeting with Joe Biden soon.
Yeah, it does show that Prime Minister Suga also places a very high priority in creating a good relationship with President Biden. In terms of North Korea, all the officials today said that would be also a very high priority for them. If you recall, the U.S. did say that they reached out to North Korea just yesterday and did not get a very good response from Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's sister. She basically signaled that she wasn't interested in speaking with U.S. officials. So now what the officials here are trying to do is bridge the gap especially between Tokyo and Seoul, which are the two kind of anchor points for Washington in Asia. President Biden will be trying to mend that relationship that has deteriorated quite a bit in the past few months, and try and take this kind of three-prong approach to North Korea and try to get North Korea to talk that way. Another issue that was mentioned today is the issue of Japanese citizens being abducted in North Korea. U.S. officials again today said that would also be placed as a priority for the U.S. as it tries to create this, very strong bond with Japan. That is a huge issue here in Japan. So,
Grace Lee, thank you so much for joining us from Tokyo with all those updates. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.